Welcome, all you weirdos, dog-based cyborgs, and everyone who's ever fallen into an Arctic hell pit. Prepare to receive your 133rd Weird Dose of X, the mutant member of your Weird Science podcast family. I am your juggernaut-maxing host, Jason, broadcasting as always from the Wrong Turn studio perched high atop Stately Weird Science Tower. And with me is a man who can recognize Monet St. Croix way better than I can. It's my pal Ruben. Hey Ruben, how the heck are you?
Doing great. How are you?
Doing pretty well. I thought I was. Now my voice feels suddenly not great, so we'll see how this podcast recording goes. Should be fantastic. But yeah, we cut things a little shorter last week for time reasons. We usually do the these things.
It's like an exhaustive deep dive.
Our dive was like a little shallower last time, which I hear is dangerous to dive into shallow water. But as far as I know, I think we'll be able to have a little more stretched out this week, a little more relaxed. Does that sound good to you? Wonderful. So, the first thing we want to talk about is the Infinity comic, which we haven't talked about in a while. And then we have Uncanny number 9. We have Mystique number 4, Hellverine number 2, last and possibly least, we'll argue that out, Phoenix number 7. So that is what we're going to discuss today. No real news. There are rumors that Phoenix number 10 might be the end of that series, maybe a big change, maybe a change in writer. I don't know, just lots of chatter going around based on the solicit uses things like final battle, and who knows what that really means. But could be some change coming there. We'll talk about it. The first thing we're going to talk about, though, is Astonishing X-Men Infinity Comic number 7 and 8, The Unbeatable Foe, parts 1 and 2. Now, that title is, of course, a lyric from the song The Impossible Dream from that Don Quixote musical, Man of La Mancha. This is written by Tim Seeley, not Alex Pactadel, who wrote the previous arc, so maybe they're alternating. Art here by Eduardo Ordino, an Italian artist. This, I'm pretty sure, is his first work from Marvel. Colors by KJ Diaz, and letters by good old Clayton Coles. So yeah, been a while since we talked about Infinity Comic. The Infinity Comic itself took a week off, and then we skipped it last week, but now we're back. The feature character for this arc is none other than Black Tom Cassidy. Now, I had totally forgotten, if I ever knew, that Black Tom is Banshee's first cousin. Did you remember that about him?
Yeah, because that was a big feature, or like a big discussion point in the like early Uncanny days.
Okay, I guess that's a section of early Uncanny I haven't read, so good to know. There's a connection there. It's I guess the Cassidys are kind of like the Guthries, another one of those big mutant-heavy families. So Black Tom's power set has changed a few times over the years. He started off a basic villain, being able to like generate force and heat blast using a wooden shillelagh. Very Irish. Then he had a secondary mutation, which allowed him to do like more creative things, but still wood-based. Then he lost all of his powers on M-Day, which those powers then returned later on through kind of unspecified reasons. And then, of course, on Krakoa, he was shown to have this deep connection to the natural side of that island. But now, it seems like he's kind of come full circle. As far as we can tell, he's back to having like heat and fire powers connected to wood. Okay. Another thing to remember is that Black Tom has had a long-running, on-again, off-again partnership with the Juggernaut, which will be relevant to this story. So, how is Black Tom dealing with the loss of Krakoa? Well, pretty well, it seems, maybe, although that's arguable. We see him at a New York City bar called the Rag Trader Pub, which apparently is a place used to hang out before Krakoa, although I think it's newly created for this issue. I couldn't find any history of it. He buys the house around, makes him popular. But then there's one guy who calls Tom soft and, not one of us no more because of his whole time with the X-Men. So it's a very standard opening to a story. Usually this would be a Wolverine opening, right? Wolverine at a bar, somebody picks a fight.
That's pretty
funny. How many times have we seen that?
Yeah.
Very Wolverine-y. We don't see exactly what happens next with Tom. We kind of cut to the outside and the whole place is on fire. And it seems that it was Black Tom who did it. So on the surface, Black Tom is just back to being a villain again. I'm guessing that the story is going to be a little deeper than that, but that's the setup. So, who rides in to arrest this villainous Black Tom Cassidy? It's none other than Captain America. That's bad luck to have Captain America come after you because it's not going to go well. Captain America here, the artist. Captain America looks weird to me. In fact, I thought at first that he was going to be that new young Captain America, the one who rides the rails, because he looks like he's about 13. But no, it is the real original Captain America unfrozen from the ice. So it is him there. And I guess he's kind of almost like the antagonist in this story, which is interesting choice. So Tom's under arrest. He uses his one phone call to ring up his old pal Juggernaut in Alaska, of course, on the X-Men team. Every member of that team is getting to have their own side story, right? Psylocke, Magic, they have their own stories. Now Juggernaut. So Juggernaut's going to head down to New York to help out his old pal. And in the final panel, we go back to that police station where we see the matches in a cop's pocket speaking to Black Tom, telling Tom to burn the whole place down. So what do we think is happening here? Is this all in Tom's head? Is he having some psychological issues? Is there a villain messing with him? What's your guess?
I'm assuming it's really happening, but I don't know why.
It's really happening, like, not like the cop would be able to hear the
no,
matches,
definitely
right? Not like really.
Yeah, no, I think it's like part of his mutation, but I don't know why the matches are talking.
He's definitely drawn to fire, which, I've heard of some kids who have that issue and doesn't always go well for them. So that's part one. In part two, we kind of see things mostly from Juggernaut's point of view. We don't get a lot of Black Tom at all. Juggy's racing off to New York to try to see his old friend before Black Tom gets shipped elsewhere. But Black Tom does get shipped off to Westchester, probably Greymalkin Prison. And when I say shipped off, I mean on an actual ship, which seems an odd way to transport a prisoner to Westchester, which is barely north of New York City. I guess it is heading up the Hudson. I mean, Westchester also is along the Hudson, but it makes a cool visual to have a ship. So far, just kind of weird.
Yeah.
Especially cool visual when there's this giant kaboom, explosion, and fire on the ship. Captain America's still hanging around. He does a cool motorcycle jump, kind of zooming up a crane that's at like a 45-degree angle to get to the ship. Pretty neat. Juggernaut's close enough to see the explosion too. He's not as cool as Cap. Few of us are. So Juggernaut has to walk across the floor of the Hudson River, and then I don't know how he gets up to the ship itself to climb on, but somehow he does.
Maybe he climbed up the anchor.
I
don't know. But why? I guess why would there be an anchor? Because isn't it like moving?
You're right. He's moving. So, oh well. If there were an anchor, that would be a great explanation. I don't know. If the idea is that he's so heavy that he sinks, I would like to see how he gets up. But doesn't matter. And also, shouldn't it take a lot longer to walk across the floor of the Hudson River than to jump over on a motorcycle?
Well, he's a Juggernaut.
So
he can go pretty fast, I guess, even in water.
The art makes it look like he's kind of plodding, but maybe. So whatever it is, Cap gets there first, but just barely. And then Juggy climbs up on the deck, and Cap thinks that Juggernaut's there to be, the muscle to break Black Tom out of his prison. That's not why Juggernaut is there. They don't know that. Looks like they're going to fight. So decent start to new arc, right? This is a classic pairing, Black Tom and Juggernaut. I like the idea of Captain America being involved, right? Tie in the larger Marvel universe. And, maybe Cap should be willing to cut these guys a little more slack, right? Cap went to the Hellfire galas. He should know that these two at least started to turn over a new leaf. Yeah. But he talks about them like they're just the old 100% plain old bad guys. Clearly, he's going to come around, or they're going to team up, I think, at some point. That's my guess.
I mean, he cuts him a little slack by saying, don't call him Muty, but that's I guess, as far as it goes for him.
Right. Just the the ethnic slur he doesn't want. But so, yeah, that was all right. The art is, it's pretty good. That Captain America looks kind of weird. The paneling is pretty standard in the first chapter. The second chapter gets a little more creative with the way the panels stretch, for Cap to be jumping onto the ship and for Juggy to be sinking and going down the bottom of the water. So I guess maybe, what's his name? Eduardo Ardino is kind of getting the hang of this new format. So that's fine. Yeah, pretty good opening to a story. I'm really curious to see why Black Tom was hearing those voices. I want to see these two adjusting to life outside of Krakoa, so that's good. Yeah, an arc that's still worth reading. Would you agree?
Yeah, I'm interested in seeing it. And I don't mind seeing a Juggernaut Captain America fight, but just kind of cheesecake. There's not really much I expect to get out of it.
Yeah, it's nothing groundbreaking, but kind of fun. Now, there is a lot going on with the Juggernaut all of a sudden. It's just a big week for him. So besides this Infinity comic, he has, a major cast role, or, semi-major in the Alaskan X-Men. He's kind of in Mystique. Not really. We'll talk about that. Because obviously it's Mystique. He's also an Amazing Spider-Man this week. Are you keeping up with his Amazing Spider-Man 8 Deaths storyline?
I bailed from the Zeb Wells plot and then have not bothered to look back at this next writer.
I've been mostly just listening to Jim talk about it on the regular Marvel show. I did see people mention or post a panel from this one, so I did check it out. The deal is that Spidey is fighting like villains who are connected to Sidorak. So that's how Juggernaut gets connected. So I think Spidey decides to quit the fight, and then Juggernaut's like his juggy sense starts tingling. Like he knows something's wrong, and that's going to bring the X-Men to the story. So I peeked ahead at some covers and solicits for Amazing Spider-Man, and the cover for the final issue of this 8 Death story shows what looks like Juggernaut himself, but dressed up in a spider-style outfit.
I don't need that.
The solicit calls him the Spider-Naut. Very strange. So, Ruben, do you think this will be a permanent change to Juggernaut's look? Do you think he will just be the Spider-Naut going forward?
That's the end.
He's going to take over ASM, and that'll be the new status quo?
Spider-Man for the next 5 years.
No more Peter, just Juggernaut.
I would.
Okay, so we can look forward to that.
As dumb as it sounds, like if that happened, I would subscribe. I'd read it for at least 12 issues. It would be out of the like.
Is it worse than Capwolf? No. I don't know. Weird things are pretty good sometimes.
Saying. It's not going to be forever, right? But I'd be like, okay, what are they going to do with this? This is crazy.
Okay, that is the Infinity comic and a little Juggernaut talk. So let's move on now to Uncanny X-Men
number 9,
which is called Off the Leash. It is written by Gail Simone, art by Andre Bresson, or maybe Bresson. It was originally solicited as being drawn by Javier Garron. And Gail Simone on Twitter. Have you noticed that she's on Twitter sometimes?
I got off that
Gail
platform.
Simone on... she
doesn't like threads, so I never see what she's...
Well, she just posted a little, big thanks to Andre Bresson for really coming through, which I'm guessing means that schedules were slipping and he stepped in to kind of save their bacon. So good for him. Colors are by Matthew Wilson, and letters, once again, by good old Clayton Coles. So let's break with tradition and talk about the art first, because why not? I was not previously familiar with Andre Bresson. He's a Brazilian artist. This seems to be his first interior work for Marvel. He's done variant covers before. Other things he's done, for DC, he did the Justice League Incarnate miniseries a couple years ago. And also, he was the artist more recently on that Destro book that's part of the Energon universe for Skybound. So, that was a pretty high-profile thing. He's got a very different look than our usual Uncanny artists. These characters are much more on, the grizzled side than the... He doesn't draw pretty superheroes like some of these other artists do. They're very much, grizzled and kind of knobbly.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of the Lock and Key artist a little bit. Very similar.
Oh, I can see that. I read that a while ago. Who was that? Lock and Key artist. Gabriel Rodriguez, apparently. Okay. Yeah, I'd put those side by side. Some of these faces are kind of towards caricature-ish, which is fine. I think the style works great for Wolverine. I love his Wolverine. I love that he makes Wolverine really short. I think a short Wolverine is just always going to be the best kind of Wolverine.
Like 5'2".
Oh, max. Like 5 foot nothing, maybe. His Gambit was bothering me because, red eyes aside, he looks like a rougher, tougher version of Archie from Archie Comics.
That's pretty funny.
And I kept expecting to Betty, Veronica, and Jughead, as the outliers or something. Yeah. It's just a little too much Archie for me, but it's fine. And again, he seems to have stepped in and done this at the last minute. So the art doesn't look rushed. It just looks different, which is fine. That's kind of cool to see these same characters drawn in a different style once in a while. Okay, actual story now. We have some character bits at Haven House, and then our major action moment at a mall. Character bits first. So, initially we have the grown-ups, that's Rogue, Logan, Kurt, Jubilee, and Archie. Gambit, sorry. The grown-ups, they are sharing some beers around a campfire. We get a little callback when Gambit scolds Kurt for buying Dunkelbrow instead of the Besson's Dark that he asked for, a few issues ago. Now, Dunkelbrow just means dark brown in German. Pretty generic name, but I guess that's what you want. And it's kind of fun that Kurt, picks the German beer over whatever the local brew is. That's nice. So Rogue wants to talk about the kids, the outliers. She thinks that the way to help them settle in, feel like part of the family, is for each kid to have one particular adult X-Man as a mentor. And I didn't notice this is my first read, but I did like seeing Ransom kind of lurking in the shadows and overhearing just parts of the conversation. That's kind of cool. I love when things happen in the art that aren't necessarily called out in text, but that inform the story. It's comics. That's what you have.
That's interesting. And you see that he only really sees the conversation about not trusting the kids, and then he's gone.
He overhears Logan saying that he doesn't trust everybody. He doesn't hear him saying, well, that's not the problem. They don't trust themselves, which, would have been the twist and turn, but he doesn't hear the good part. Let's see. So Rogue assigns Jubilee to Death Dream, saying if ever a kid could use some sparkle, it's him. Makes sense. Logan's going to take over helping Ransom. The other two, not super clear yet. So first, Jubilee finds Death Dream for a chat. And where does she find Death Dream? He's in the graveyard.
Yeah, that's what he does.
Of course he is.
Sitting on a gravestone.
He's kind of one note. A cool character. I'd like to see him have a little more than, just grim,
lurking in a graveyard,
weirdo, gothish character. He reminds us that he's raised himself from the dead a bunch of times. Hey, I think that might be relevant later. And that he can talk to ghosts, including the ghosts of his own parents. Jubilee, the only thing she can think of to kind of cheer him up is to create a glowing ball of light for him to play with. Okay, he likes it. Nothing too deep, decent enough. So next, Gambit and Kurt are looking for Calico and Jitter. So I guess the two of those are mentors to those two girls in one pairing or another. The girls are by themselves in the barn. Kurt says, hey, let's just leave them alone for now. Probably go drink some beers instead. Why not? Calico, we find out, likes to practice ballet in private, but has never had a partner to perform the pas de deux, which is just, dance for two people. So I think it really just means step by two, I think is what it comes to. It's not quite body slide by two, but it's kind of French for that. So Jitter sets her ability to best ballet dancer in the world, male, to be the partner, and off they go. So they have a 1-minute dance together. I hope they go quickly. Did you happen to read Gabe's written review at WeirdScienceMarvelComics.com?
No, I should. What did he say?
Well, he says he didn't like the issue very much, but this isn't his style thing. That's fine. He says that at the end of the dance, the two girls have a smooch.
Yeah, that's what I gathered.
You got that too? Okay. I guess I'm just innocent because we always see her like from their ankles or calves down. And I guess that Calico does turn towards Jitter.
I think it's
just from the way the feet are positioned.
It's the foot is supposed to be like, kind of the when you smooch and put your foot up kind of gesture.
Well, she's still on her toes as a ballet dancer.
You're so innocent, man.
But again, you two saw the same thing, so I guess I'm outvoted. Yes. I guess that'll be a thing.
Well, and we were told a while,
and not unlike Gail Simone to put that in.
Yeah, not unlike it. And then also remember we were told there would be some kind of romance between X characters. Is this that? I thought it was between the teams, but.
Yeah, because there was a moment when Ransom and Temper kind of had a little hey, how you doing moment in the crossover. I think that's what we were told about. But yeah, this could be another one. Got to have drama between the kids. Okay. Finally, we've got Ransom to deal with. He's been a cranky guy all along. He just heard Logan say how he doesn't really trust him. So he's got his backpack over one shoulder and is heading out on his own to be picked up in a car that his cousin is sending for him. He happens to run to Logan. Ransom and Logan chat a bit. And Logan does the, hey, I know how you feel, kid thing. Perfectly fine. Nothing new, nothing groundbreaking, but fine.
Did you see who his cousin was?
I did, yes. Looking at the phone when Ransom calls his cousin to call off the car, his cousin is Roberto da Costa,
Sunspot.
Also known as Sunspot. Yeah, now we haven't seen him since the end of Krakoa. Ransom tells Sunspot, I'm going to stick around, for now at least. And Roberto tells Ransom, don't take any crap. Now, Ruben, has that been Ransom's major problem recently as part of the action? Has he been too much of a doormat, taking too much crap?
But I also thought it was weird that Sunspot wouldn't, contact the team and be like, oh, hey, you're mentoring my cousin now? That's cool, right? It's a little weird that
You'd
this is sort of
yeah.
like a, not mentioned, relationship.
We knew Ransom was Brazilian, and so is Sunspot.
And there's only two Brazilian people, yeah.
My understanding is Brazil is a fairly large place. I've only been as far south as Panama. I can't play that clip because we get sued, but that's as close as I've gone to Brazil. I think there's a lot of people there, so quite a coincidence. But hey, Marvel Comics, coincidences happen. By the way, does Logan... Are we ever going to revisit the Logan, hey, you have PTSD plot point?
Yeah, somebody probably passed her a memo, be like, this is already being covered in like every other X-Men.
Maybe. I'm fine with being dropped, but if you think he has PTSD, you going to make him mentor a kid who also has problems?
That's pretty funny.
Asking for trouble, if you really think that. There is also a mention in the narration from Rogue that, Logan's eyes are finally better again. Which is weird because they've been fine for 2 issues of the crossover. But
nobody really was paying attention.
Nobody mentioned it. It's weird just to not mention it until now.
No, I didn't see that. I kind of laughed.
Okay, so that's all the character touchy-feely
Let's talk about
stuff.
that for like 1 second.
Yes?
Didn't they just have like the raid on Grey Malkin? Like, did Rogue think that it was like, oh yeah, he can't see, but that's cool. Let's go raid Grey Malkin prison with the blind Logan.
he can smell things really good, Ruben. All nose stuff. Oh well. It is almost like like the narrative kind of skips over those 2 issues, right? We don't really deal with the aftermath of the raid here. It kind of comes right over from 2 issues ago. Maybe she wrote it like that and then had to go back and insert the crossover.
Yeah, that's probably right. They probably, she wrote a story and then
editorial came, oh, by the way, you're doing a crossover here on these 2 issues, and she just kind of
maybe
stuck some stuff in, maybe without fixing up all the...
But it was kind of funny.
That can certainly happen. Okay, on to the main action feature. It's time to go to the mall. Do kids still go to malls?
What's a mall?
I don't know.
Just kidding.
I'm just as old as Gail Simone. I think she's actually like 5 or 6 months older than me. So I went to malls when I was a kid, but maybe kids still do. I would have thought they would just order things online from Amazon or whatever, but that's not what happened here.
That would be a kind of funny plot point if these young kids started making fun of Jubilee. Treated her like a boomer.
Oh wow, that can be her new. Like her powers got improved, right? Like everybody's. She make bigger explosions now. Boomer. That's a perfect code name for Jubilee. Make it happen. Also weird. I guess this group of X-Men has like kind of a lot of money because Gambit seems to have bought an SUV, and then Jubilee gives each of the kids $400 in cash to buy clothes, see lunch, hang out at the mall. That's kind of, I don't know. $1,600 just to give out to the kids seems like a lot.
It's that Mysterium money. It's the Mysterium money, man. They still got that.
Oh. Yeah, the whole financial situation for all these mutants, like Kurt had early on, when in the timeline where we are in Wolverine, Kurt had as a Blackbird and also an apartment. So, yeah, money is not a problem. It is kind of fun to see how the kids react differently to the money. I like this a lot. So, like to Jitter, she grew up relatively poor. This is way more money than she's used to ever seeing. Ransom grew up rich, and $400 seems like enough to buy 1 pair of shoes to him. Becca grew up rich, but she says, this is my first money. Like, she's so sheltered, she's never actually touched the stuff before. Which, again, fits in with what we've seen of her background. It works. And Deathstream is just a weirdo, right? He doesn't want to change his look, thinks maybe he'll buy a nice shroud. I think he ends up spending most of his money on Auntie Anne's hot pretzels, which I can respect that. Those are good. Okay, meanwhile, there's a bit of trouble. In an opening scene that I kind of skipped, we went back to Grey Malkin. We saw Trask and company do another test on those dog-based cyborg sentinels. They keep changing the name, or maybe they haven't had a name. We've been changing the name, but Wolfpack seems to be like the official name for these dog cyborg sentinels. And Trask is showing them off to a potential client. Is this the guy who's running Terra Verde, or is this just some random...
Yeah, I couldn't tell. It'd be nice if it was the Terra Verde guy, because then you'd have continuity, but I didn't bother to look it up.
I don't think it's clear. He's wearing a green sash and, green Verde. I'm gonna in my head think of him as being the Terra Verde guy unless it proves otherwise. I did think it really funny how Trask is trying to sell the Wolfpack using all these best, like, progressive-sounding talking points. Uses words like humane, carbon-friendly, even says they're using unhoused dogs. Very, very funny. I like that. Now, these dogs seem way more effective than we've ever seen them before, right? In Sentinels, they were just not working. In X-Men, in the crossover, they were functional, but the X-Men... dispatched them pretty quickly. Those were the actual grown-up X-Men, so that's okay. Now they seem very, very effective, not so obedient, which is kind of a problem. So the king, or Terra Verde guy, we're going to call him, he wants to buy a few dozen units anyway to use against his political opponents. Which seems really short-sighted, right? What good is a killing machine that just doesn't take orders very well? Asking for trouble. It's like I have this self-driving lawnmower, but, every few minutes it'll just zoom off in a random direction. It doesn't let you turn it off.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be okay in a warfield.
Seems
you just
bad.
drop it and point it in the right direction. But
yeah, I guess if you drop it somewhere where you're just surrounded by nobody but enemies, that'd work. But how about like, I don't know, Ruben, to pick something at random, how about a suburban mall? Does that seem a good place to send these not very reliable killing machines?
Yeah, probably not.
It's not really clear whose authority this is being sent out on. I guess it seems like there's this tech crew who doesn't really report to anybody very well. I'm willing to believe that the management structure at Greymalkin is not the greatest, not Six Sigma certified or whatever the buzzword is. So, yeah, I'm willing to say that, okay, these guys they're kind of on their own. This is what they're building. And this was kind of neat. One of them, Kenneth, says, we just picked up the outliers, these kids, on our trackers. They were shielded wherever they were before, but now they're going to this mall. What did you take from that little chit-chat there?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know who's shielding them, who has the power to do that.
Yeah, something.
Maybe it's...
I wonder if it's something going on with Haven House itself.
Yeah, or it could be the eye that Gambit has.
Oh, okay. Maybe. Yeah, because Gambit's not on this trip, so that could work. I'm still going to stick with my it's Haven House theory, but the eye of Agamotto also makes sense.
It's not the eye of Agamotto, but it's like the other one.
Right. It's still an eye of Agamotto. Okay, so what happens now? We got our big action scene. We got the outliers doing their shopping at the mall. Wolfpack shows up, tries to hunt them down. And once again, the Wolfpack, way scarier and more effective than we've seen before. They look bigger, too. Were they always this big? This one looks like the size of a tiger. It's truly terrifying.
Yeah. Also, when they were doing the demo and when Trask is demoing these things and they kill the random intern, he was wearing Sentinel's armor, which I thought was a little weird.
Oh, yeah, that's kind of cool.
I just find it weird in general that
we're still
Trask
thinking that this series takes place after Sentinel.
And I was like, how is Trask still there? But I guess they like him enough.
Well, I guess whatever happens at the end of Sentinels is not going to get rid of Trask. That's what it seems like. Big action scene. Calico summons the horse Ember, who wasn't in the SUV with them. So once again, weird things go on with Ember. I want to get some clarification on that, but cool to see it just kind of hinted at again. Death Dream sends his ghosts out, because that's his one move, but they don't work. And he says, oh, right, the dead can't see inorganic things.
Yeah, of course.
Isn't that kind of a mistake? Because these aren't just robot dogs. They're even in this issue, they're specifically called out as being cyborgs that have a real dog component to them somewhere.
Yeah. No, I think you're saying they're dead? Because I think he's saying the things that he summons can't see the dogs.
Right, but he said they can't see the dogs because the dogs are inorganic. They're a combination of organic and inorganic. So I would think that they would be able to affect I don't know if it's just the dog's brain in there or whatever. Something should be effective, but maybe that'll be explained.
No, it's not. Don't kid yourself.
I can hope for these things, Ruben. I'm allowed to. So doesn't work at all. These ghosts are so ineffective that poor old Death Dream and the big shocking final cliffhanger, he's dead in a pool of blood.
But didn't he already talk about how he's died a bunch of times? I'm assuming he's dead, but he'll be back in
in
5 seconds.
This issue in various times. So he's the one character who, we're back on Krakoa, his death doesn't matter, but they're playing it up like it matters. So I think that's kind of silly. It's a cool looking page, and it looks terrifying. Those Sentinel dogs, the Wolfpack, are truly horrifying. They're going to haunt my nightmares, but it shouldn't bother him at all. They poor choice on the part of the dogs to kill the one character. Doesn't matter if you kill.
It's definitely a shocking looking page, but I was like, Gail Simone, you're not tricking me. I've been paying enough attention that I know this doesn't actually mean the character's dead.
Yeah, and you don't even need to look ahead at solicits and covers to realize, Death Dream's going to be just fine. Now, one minor thing I didn't mention along the way, In a panel showing Dr. Ellis and company at the mansion, we see a certain character in the background being led off in handcuffs. Now, Ruben, who is that character?
Oh, was that? Oh, no. I told you. I even gave you the answer in the Slack. Who is it? Just tell me.
You did. It's
Okay,
Monet St. Clair.
Yeah. I want to go on record that I did
Clair?
know that at
Monet.
one point.
Did I get your name right? I did, because it's one of the things where I only saw, I was looking at it in the review copies, which are, kind of low res, and I realized, I know I'm supposed to know who this is. She's wearing a uniform. Can't quite place it. And you answered me right away when I sent you the DM. Like, oh, yeah, that's Monet. So St. Croix. Not St. Clair, St. Croix. That's right. We haven't seen her in a while. She was part of that Heir of Apocalypse story that gave us, this guy.
Teach me how to duck. Teach me how to duck.
And she was in the bonus page that the QR code sent us to at the end of Uncanny issue number 1. So this is something that Gail Simone had set up way back then. And I guess she's going to be a new character in the book at some point. I don't know in what context, but right now she's in prison here at Greymalkin. Kind of interesting. Okay, to wrap this thing up, this issue was okay, right? Nothing amazing. I'm kind of surprised at how much this whole volume of Uncanny is centered on these outlier kids. Right? It's kind of the outliers featuring the X-Men.
Yeah, it's clear that Gail just wants to write those characters, but she knows that she has to feature some of the legacy characters too.
So yeah, I would like to know more about them by now. Not just who they're related to, but it's been a while. I guess there were some crossover issues. I want to get them filled. If they're going to be the main characters, I should know more about them. Don't need every mystery filled in, but I think maybe more than we have. I do think that this book is doing a way better job than some other X books on combining character slice of life stuff with actual, superhero comic book action. Yeah. So give credit for that. Once again, this wolf pack, incredibly scary, really cool look to it. So credit to the designers on that, and also to this villain artist, Andre Bresson. That I think of all the things he's drawn in this issue, these Wolfpack Sentinel dogs are clearly the best. Some of the decisions kind of dumb, right? Sending these not really functional dogs out into the real world. Clearly, they're going to malfunction here, and probably the other X-Men are going to have to show up to save the day. But again, I'm willing to write this off as being poor management structure, hard to get good help these days. Put it all together, I guess I'm at like I'll call it a 7 out of 10. It's a perfectly fine issue.
That's exactly my score.
Okay, so that is Uncanny
number 9.
And yeah, let's see. We see it says next, the first casualty. So we'll have to be, really worried for the next few weeks about, poor Deathstream. What are they ever going to do without Deathstream? I wonder. Moving on to our next book, which is Mystique number 4 of 5. It's called Covers. Written and drawn by Declan Shalvey. Colors by Matt Hollingsworth. Letters by Clayton Coles. Boy, he's all over the place today. So my first read-through of this issue, I was super, super confused. Mostly because I'm a dummy. Because it seemed to me that Mystique was appearing in multiple places at the same time. Are there 2 of her? Is there another shapeshifter at work?
I noticed the timestamps, so I was like...
That's because you're not as much of a dummy as I am, apparently. Every scene does get given a very specific to-the-minute timestamp. They're just not shown in order. So, obviously, we're going to put them back in order because that's what we do. That's our trademark, by the way. If you hear any other podcast putting comic books back in order chronologically, let us know because they owe us money. We own that. So Declan Shalvey he's always been messing with us throughout this whole book. That's been kind of fun. This time he does it. One way is by putting things out of order, although labeling them. Another way is having a continuous narration coming to us that is, in order itself, coming from Nick Fury Jr. This happens when Nick Jr.'s part of the scene. It happens when Nick Jr. is not part of the scene. And it happens when only somebody who looks like Nick Jr. is part of the scene. So, very tricky there. Now, the recap page is, I think, important this week as well. Ruben, are you, can you read that recap to me?
Mystique has been searching for a mysterious device called Protozoa, but her activities have attracted the attention of Nick Fury, agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. Things have escalated as Fury has Mystique's wife, Destiny, in custody. Meanwhile, Mystique has kidnapped Fabian Cortez, whose power-enhancing abilities have allowed her to perfectly mimic other X-genes. But this has come with tremendous physical cost. Mystique has never been so dangerous.
Okay, so I don't always read recaps. I probably should. So the first paragraph is really just, hey, don't forget about Protozoa, which we saw Mystique was after Protozoa from issue number 1. We still don't know what Protozoa actually is, but she wants it. And Protozoa sounds like something shape-shifty. The second paragraph does a thing I don't usually care for. It kind of tells us things that I don't think the comic itself has told us yet. So it says that, let's see, her Fabian Cortez's power-enhancing abilities have allowed her to perfectly mimic other X genes. So we saw that him thinking she was Magneto and then using his powers gave her Magneto powers. But I guess it doesn't. I thought his belief that it was Magneto was part of the shtick. But I guess not. I guess he can just give her the ability to do whatever. And I guess that's what was happening in that last confusing scene last issue where he was in the trunk and then she was bending forward and he was screaming. It's almost like she ate him or consumed his abilities somehow. We don't know exactly how but he has given her the ability to mimic all these other mutant powers. And we're going to see her do that. Then it says this has come with tremendous physical cost. At the end of last issue, she looked kind of worn out and beaten up, but I thought that was just from all the fighting she had done. Apparently that's a cost of this Fabian Cortez super power up, which, it's not a bad idea because it is good to put some sort of a limit on this new ability. You don't want her to suddenly be able to be like, I don't know, Legion and just, wreck the whole world. So a limit, that's good. Okay, so that's the recap. So are we good to dive into putting this book back in chronological order? Anything else you noted from this recap that you think needs chatting?
Well, I noticed that I was right about what was going on with Fabian. That was very rewarding.
Oh, good for you. We all like being right. Very good. Which prediction specifically was that?
How he was like supercharging her mimicking powers, and that's why she was able to do the Magneto stuff.
Right. And also like Colossus stuff, I think, at the end a little bit. Okay, so on to the actual comic pages. We start at 8:35 in the morning when Maverick attacks Nick Jr. So in this scene, Nick Jr. is driving to work. He's driving a very nondescript sedan, like he's trying to fit in like he's a spy or something, which he is. But did you notice his license plate?
Yeah, it's like Nick Jr., wasn't it?
It says Fury Jr. on it. So which way you going there, Nick? Pick a lane. So probably a poor choice there because he is noticed and he's attacked by, it looks like Maverick. We don't see him change into Mystique, but I think we can assume this is Mystique here. We saw Mystique capture Maverick in issue 1 and pump him for information about Protozoa. Haven't seen him since. For all we know, he might be dead. Now, at the end of this scene, it looks like Fury has won the fight. He kind of does this flying suplex thing to Maverick, and then we get this little black rectangle, and then we see Nick Fury standing alone next to his flaming car. So what do you think really happened here?
I'm a little confused. I was a little confused by the, panel where Nick grabs Maverick's throat and then there's like a suplex going on. It sort of, the way it's framed, it looks like Nick grabbed his neck and then like flipped him over and knocked him down. My guess is what actually happened is he grabbed his neck and then Maverick did some crazy ass backflip and then, smashes Nick to the ground and knocks him out. And then, because right after that black panel, we see Nick standing up, right? And I think that is actually Mystique getting up.
Because now that we've read the whole thing, we know that later on Mystique is going to be impersonating Nick Jr. He doesn't get out of here. So exactly when and where the switcheroo happens, whether it happens like in those little black panels, if it happens after we cut off the scene, I don't know. Maybe that'll be explained.
I think the black panel is basically supposed to be showing you that Nick went unconscious.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's reasonable.
And then, Mystique lifts up or stands up, and then from that point forward, whoever we think is Nick is actually Mystique.
Sounds good. Let's see. But so the narration boxes continue, which is kind of weird because right now he says, Maverick really knocked me around earlier. And then he talks about how, you don't mess with a Fury. When it comes to the fight, we win. So the narration makes it seem like Nick Fury won this fight. But I guess this narration is coming from him later on when he knows he's been captured. So it's weird things for him to be saying from that perspective. Trying to put that together. And maybe when he's been captured, he thinks he's been captured by Maverick. He doesn't realize that it was Mystique. Yeah, he talks about Maverick. So anyway, that's what I think is happening there. Chronologically, the next thing that happens is at just after noon. It says 12:05, where we see Juggernaut raiding the port of Baltimore. So he's smashing through the containers. He stomps a group of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents to death, tears open another container that had served as a secret S.H.I.E.L.D. location. Which, is this the same one that Nick had been using to house Destiny earlier on? Or is this just a thing they do?
No, I think this is the same one.
Same place? Yep. Probably. Now, Juggernaut does transform into Mystique in the scene, so we know it's Mystique. All she finds, though, is a video file confirming that Destiny had been held by Fury and Maria Hill, and she also finds one terrified S.H.I.E.L.D. guy who confirms for her that Destiny is not really dead, despite Nick having put that rumor out. And Mystique then flies off in the form of Angel, which looks pretty cool. I have a couple issues with this scene. So, big Juggernaut week, as we discussed. Now, Ruben, tell me about Juggernaut's
mutant abilities.
Mutant powers.
You're going to go there.
So, list for me all of Juggernaut's mutant abilities.
He has miscolored eyes. I don't know.
Right, he's not a mutant. He's stepbrother to Xavier.
He's your stepbrother, and he has his powers from Crystal of Sidorak? Gem of Sidorak?
It's the Gem of Sidorak. Is it still the gem? I think there may have been a little bit of a change, but whatever it is.
Bloodstream now. But he's got his magic-based powers.
Yeah. So even the recap itself was very specific, saying that Mystique can mimic all mutant-based abilities. So, I'm curious if this is this going to be explained, or is this just, boy, Declan Shalvey really wanted to draw Juggernaut, and who can blame him, because Juggernaut looks friggin' cool, but maybe he should have chosen some other super strong mutant character to get the same job done.
I'm sort of okay with it just because it's like, there's a lot of strong mutants, right? So maybe you look like Juggernaut, but then you give yourself some strength on the inside.
Oh, I mean, so this Fabian Cortez power, so I thought so far it's always been a package deal, the look and the powers, but it's even more kind of off the charts powerful if you can mix and match, right? If she can just think it's like sync, but she doesn't need to sync with anybody. She can just, any mutant power she knows about, she can use. It's all still very vague here, and it's probably all going to go away by the end of the series, but okay, I like that explanation. I'll go with that. Maybe, tell me, can you explain this one away, though? So, what time is this happening?
So this is, 1200? Yeah, 12:05.
12:05 hours, it says. Now, what time of day is 12:05?
It's midday, right? Like noon?
Yeah, it's like right after noon. So the coloring for these pages makes it look like sunrise or sunset.
It's all yellow.
Everything's just beautiful, golden, low light colors. Maybe the colorist just was dumb like me and didn't notice the timestamp. But it looks pretty cool. It just stood out to me because I was trying to figure out, is that the time somewhere else? Are we in a weird location? I think it's just kind of a coloring oops. But that's being kind of picky. That's being picky. I should let that go. So we are at noon. Now we jump to 1500 hours, which is 3 p.m. We see Cable attacking a S.H.I.E.L.D. safe house. Just kind of a straightforward action scene. Cable blowing up some S.H.I.E.L.D. dudes while inquiring loudly about, where's Irene? Again, I think Declan Shalvey just wanted to draw a cool action scene with Cable. And you can even see in one of the images, it's kind of mid-transformation. You can see some of the Mystique thing. Jump ahead 2 more hours to 1720.
Well, I think there's... never mind.
Oh, go ahead.
No, now I'm missing the timestamps. Go ahead.
Well, I think you're just trying to make me feel better, but I appreciate it. The next timestamp is 1720. Marrow, again, killing a bunch of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. And once again, I think it's just Declan Shalvey was thinking, who are some cool-looking mutant characters? Because I can draw any character I want in this book because I got Mystique. Let's go with Marrow. And yeah, Mystique is very much not just knocking out or disabling these people. She is brutally killing lots and lots of people. Next timestamp is 1810, or just after 6 p.m. Yeah, I did the math correctly, 6 p.m. And it's about an hour later. We're visiting Maria Hill's office at S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters. She notices that, her agent, who's supposed to report to her, Nick Jr., hasn't reported in. And she starts to get extra suspicious when she notices in a report about that morning's attack that the attacker was supposedly Maverick. And hey, wasn't Maverick kind of connected to Mystique not so long ago? So Maria Hill is on the right track, kind of too slow, because just at that moment, a bomb explodes in a lower office on the same building, presumably that bomb being placed there by Mystique during her earlier visit. Did I skip a scene?
Yeah,
Did I screw up and skip a scene?
We skipped the 1000, which is like before all that. But basically, there's the Maverick fight scene, and then right after the Maverick fight scene, Nick shows up and kind of checks in, and then we see at one point he goes into an office and he has a thumb drive and uploads Protozoa.
Ruben, we're going to lose our intellectual property rights to this, putting things back in order because I screwed
and even
it up.
Timestamps.
But yeah, so it's in my notes. Yeah. I was scrolling through my notes. Oh, I'm a dummy. Okay, so yeah, the thing there, Jim will fix this in the edit, right? It'll be perfectly smooth in the edit. No one will ever know that I made any mistakes. Okay, so yeah, just after 10 a.m., Nick, guy who looks like Nick Fury, is there in the office, and he kind of scans into places, and we see him uploading Protozoa to the database.
And by going into the office, that's how we get like an explanation for how she knew where to go, right? She learns about all the safe houses, so she hits the, the warehouse, the dock, and then she goes to the, secondary location as Cable.
And it explains why S.H.I.E.L.D. thinks, okay, there was an attack on Nick Fury this morning, but he won and everything's fine, when clearly it isn't. Okay, that's fine. Jim, you're on this, Jim. I have faith in you. You can make this all make perfect sense. Jumping back to the end, so the bomb goes off in Maria Hill's office. Presumably, Mystique had left it there on her first visit. Okay, so just minutes later in the final scene, we see Nick Fury open a hidden door to a secret apartment. And now we see this Nick Fury revealed to be Mystique, and the real Nick Fury bound and gagged inside the apartment. And now even the narration lets on that he lost the fight. And I also noticed that the narration here makes note that it was his dad, Nick Sr., who pointed him towards this mission. Now, I'm going to take this as evidence supporting my big theory that Nick Sr. has never actually been in this story. It was always Mystique. So we'll find out for sure next time, I bet, but I think that's good evidence. Okay, so to sum up once again, despite that this story was kind of confused, kind of, not confused. I was the one who was confused. It was kind of confusing. A little bit contrived the way they did the nonlinear storytelling, a little artificial. He gave us the timestamps. I gotta say he's playing fair. I like the way that it's bringing things together from earlier parts of the story. Maverick, Protozoa, Fabian Cortez. We can kind of see how all those pieces are important. Still loving Declan Shalvey's art. Very cool looking, very distinctive. Doesn't look like any other book on the shelves. The cover shows an image of Nick Jr. with Mystique's face kind of hauntingly superimposed on top of him, which I'll take that as foreshadowing that, it'll look like Nick, but it'll really be Mystique. That's pretty good. And yeah, Declan Shalvey seems to be having just a great time drawing all these cool-looking characters. Juggernaut, Angel, Cable, Marrow, any character from X history he wants to use, he gets to use, and he's making the most of it. So I'm really excited for the final issue that's to come out. I hope it lives up to my high expectations, even if I'm going to ding the book slightly for that Juggernaut slip, although I'll take your explanation, Ruben. I think that works. That's your I'll give you the no prize on that. I'm still giving this, a more than respectable 8.5 out of 10. Still a really good book.
I was satisfied by it. I'll just give it an 8, but that's still stamp approval. You should be reading this story.
Absolutely. One of the best things going on in Marvel Comics today. Okay, so that is the end of this book. Hi again, everybody. Just Jason here right now, as Ruben had to leave and go make some lunch for his wife. Isn't that real nice of him?
Ruben.
Stuck again. Shut up, Matt. But he is a good husband, so that's nice of him. I got nobody else at home right now to cook for. I'm going to cook later. So I'm going to just quickly talk you guys through these last 2 issues of this week, which are going to be Hellverine number 2 and Phoenix number 7. neither of which are exactly the big books this week. So Hellverine number 2, which is of course by Ben Percy, with art by Raphael Ienco, colors by Brian Valenza, letters by Travis Lanham. This is continuing what Ben Percy did last time. We've got a new status quo for Hellverine. He's like a firestorm situation. You got Akihiro and you've got Bagra Ghul kind of squished together, where Akihiro was been dead since he was murdered to death by Sabretooth, and he's kind of being animated by this creature of hell, Bagra Ghul, who used to be interested in making death into art, but then after he merged with Logan was all just about, we're going to keep on killing, of course, love the killing, but it's only going to be bad guys. But at the end of last issue, Akihiro visited Doctor Strange, and Doctor Strange said, yeah, Bagra Ghul is still completely working for Mephisto, still a bad dude, and Mephisto has some kind of plan for you too, and you'd better not turn evil or I'm going to come get you. Words to that effect. So Strange sends Hellverine through a portal onto his next mission, which happens to be back at the greenhouse, aka Krakoa farther north, that X-Force location at the North Pole where they kind of ran and hid after that final Hellfire Gala. And it seems like this is a pretty cool place to hang out. I still don't know how people get up there to the North Pole, but some other mutants have been kind of using it as a place to squat, place to hide out from, those nasty humans with their fear and their hatred who are always giving them a hard time. Did this work out well for those mutants? It did not, because some bad stuff was going on at Akihiro's old grave location, which, all sorts of things bad happen there, but now Bagra Ghul has kind of made it like a hell pit site, kind of like we're in Buffy or something. So Akihiro wanders around the old place and discovers this horrific corpse. Really, really too horrific, maybe. I mean, it's a disturbing image. Bloody remains of a young woman with this gaping hole through her chest. She's got fangs, she's got claws, she's got bones sticking out of her back, she's got this gross fungus thing all over her. Just really gross. I mean, technically, it's an incredibly well-drawn image, but maybe I'm going soft in my old age. I didn't need quite that much detail. Your mileage may differ. So, Akihiro then runs into a living resident of the greenhouse, this guy named Evan. Evan can shoot kinetic energy blasts from his hands. Seems like kind of a cool guy, but don't get too attached to Evan. He's not making it out of this issue. Evan and Akihiro have a little bit of a fight until Akihiro says, hey, you can trust me. I'm a good guy. I'll help you out. We'll see how well it works out for Evan. Akihiro does that kind of sort of penance stare thing with Evan to kind of learn the backstory. Very handy in a book like this. And what happened was Evan was out hunting with another resident of the greenhouse, a girl named Celine. She's the lady who is now a corpse with a hole through her chest. And this got led back to Akihiro's grave, which is now that pit to hell. And some whispering from the pit drew them closer, and Celine fell in. Oops. So when Evan dragged Celine's dumbass out, she had already become this murderous monster that Evan would eventually have to put down. He's the one who made that big old hole through her chest through his kinetic energy blasts. So now the big showdown. Oh, just spilled my tea. Oh my goodness. See, Ruben, this is what happens when you leave me to my own devices. I wave my hands around trying to be too emotional, and I knock down my own tea. Well, we've got our big showdown now. Akihiro wants to take down the death totem at the pit, which he compares to like an unholy version of computer code. All right, Ben Percy, let's go with that, I guess. We got some unholy computer code. We're going to rip it down. Akihiro goes full Hellverine, and he's attacked by the other demon-infested forms of the other mutants that have been living there. And while Hellverine fights those minions, Evan starts directing those force blasts at the totem itself. But now, Akihiro is kind of two minds, literally, because his narration boxes say that he wants to help Evan, but the demon, Bagra Ghul, wants to hurt him because Evan's attacking, the art death totem. So Hellverine turns on Evan. He said he was going to help you out. You're safe. I'll keep you protected, but not so good. But in 2 quick panels, Akihiro asserts control again by thinking back on his own humanity and ends it all by not making this up, Akihiro Hellverine breathes fire at the death totem. So that defeats the totem, but it's not quite over yet, as immediately afterwards, poor Evan gets dragged into the pit himself, just like Celine did. So all Akihiro can do is say, well, too late, hell has him. Oh boy, not so good. Sorry, Evan, hardly knew ye, but you seem to be one and done. Now Dr. Strange arrives to send Akihiro on to his next mission, which the promo tells us will be in Japan. So, this is not a badly told story. If you're looking for horror in the Marvel Universe, this is probably your best bet. The art itself, really very good. If you're disturbed by disturbing images, maybe not for you. Wouldn't give this to a kid, as here's a first comic to try out. Pretty much on the disturbing side for that. But if you're looking for things and maybe you're tougher than squeamish old softy me, you probably enjoy that. The characters look great, locations look great, and the horror is horrifying. Me, I like it when these horror stories, these action stories that Ben Percy does, when it's so far over the top that you can kind of laugh at it, you can have some goofy fun with it. And that's not what this issue does. This is a much more serious, disturbing take on, an undead person infested by a demon, which, now that I say it out loud, is kind of a dark idea. But for what it is, it's well done. So I'm going to give Hellverine number 2, a 7.3 out of 10. On to our last issue of the day. Where's my button there? Ding sound, very important. The last issue is Phoenix number 7, written by Stephanie Phillips, art by Marco Renna, colors by David Curiel, and letters by Corey Pettit. Listeners, if I had a nickel for every female X-Men character who, in just the past couple months, was given huge cosmic power by Eternity,
I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, right?
But it's strange, Jean Grey is supposed to have been just completely changed and made this new kind of a being by Eternity. And in this issue, we see Jean Grey do a bunch of stuff, including fighting Thanos head-on, but she doesn't seem any stronger or any different than the Jean we had in issue 1 or the Jean we had at the end of Krakoa before this even got started. So I don't really see why we had to have that. It didn't seem to make any difference at all. Maybe it'll become clear in future issues what really happened, but so far now it just seems kind of like a big nothing. Well, what does happen this issue? Jean had called a team together to help her oppose Thanos. That team includes Nova, Captain Marvel, Rocket Raccoon, and the Asgardian Sif, which sounds like fun. The problem is that none of these cool characters are written to show any real personality. Like, for instance, Sif mentions that she had sworn an oath as an Asgardian to not leave her post at the Bifrost, but then she decided to leave anyway because Jean called her. I think that should be a bigger deal for Sif, right? She just kind of throws off the remark like, hey, no biggie. Nova, he was taken over by Thanos last time, so you could kind of write off his lack of any strong character as just recovering from that. Rocket Raccoon, he swears a little bit because that's a Rocket thing to do, but otherwise he's not so interesting. Just kind of a blander team than you'd think by looking at the names on the list. So Jean needs this team because I don't know why she needs the team. She's supposed to be super powerful, but we're told that Thanos is in possession of this artifact called the Warlock's Eye that does mind control stuff and also hides his whereabouts from even the Phoenix Force. Maybe that's what was going on in Uncanny. Maybe there's a Warlock's Eye at Haven House, and that's why Ellis and her team couldn't track the outliers there, but Thanos definitely has one now. So if Jean can't track him, and the cover promises Jean will be fighting Thanos, how do we make that happen? Well, we use Adani. Adani's remember that gal who blames Jean for the death of her father, and to get revenge on Jean, Adani becomes a lackey of Pericus, the man who had actually killed her father. Doesn't make any sense to me, but that's the story. Pericus doesn't actually appear in this issue, but I guess he and Adani are still hanging around with Thanos. Now, Jean and Adani happen to share a psychic link because of a thing Jean did a couple issues ago. So Jean psychically asks Adani, hey chick, hey girlfriend, where are you and Thanos hanging out at? And there's an emotional moment when it seems like maybe Adani's heart grew 3 sizes that day. Because Adani repeatedly tells Jean, I can't tell you, emphasizing the word tell and winking really obviously. So obviously Adani is conveying the information to Jean via thought instead of words. But since the whole conversation is happening via thought, I don't know that distinction really makes a difference. And why can't Adani say the word? It's never explained. Very strange, kind of artificial. So, one way or another, Jean knows where Thanos is. Plan is for Nova, Sif, and Rocket to distract the Black Order, while Jean herself attacks Thanos directly and goes after the artifact. So, they lure the Black Order away, but it seems from the art like they lure it like half a block down the road. I would think, hey guys, you've got the whole galaxy here. Why not make them fly somewhere totally different? But you can kind of see in the background from where Thanos still is. Jean shows up. Fighty stuff happens between her and Thanos. She's still not strong enough to defeat Thanos, even with the power-up. Thanos uses the artifact's mind control powers, or some sort of corruption powers, to take over the Phoenix Force, or going to turn the force of life into the force of death. Very vague, very hand-wavy. And the only way that Jean can get out of this, out from doing Thanos' bidding, is to send the Phoenix Force through the psychic link to Adani, that girl who until recently hated her stinking guts. And now, for insufficiently established reasons, giving up the Phoenix Force means Thanos loses control of Jean. I would think it would be all the easier to control Jean, who would still be a powerful mutant, but without the Phoenix Force. But nope, once the Phoenix Force is gone, loses control completely. Now Adani has the Phoenix powers, and I guess her heart reshrinks 3 or 4 sizes, because now Adani, with the Phoenix power, turns on Jean. And then there's some kind of a fight, and Jean tries to take the Phoenix powers back. I think she wins. I don't know how. Very unclear. There's a flash of light, and in the final panel, Jean is tossed halfway across the galaxy onto the blue area of the moon. This is all... Does it sound like nonsense the way I'm explaining it? Because I think it's all nonsense. The plot is it's a series of, and then this wacky thing happens, and then that wacky thing happens. The characters are super flat. I'd had hopes that Adani could be the one redeeming quality of this story, but her motivations here are just jerked back and forth so many times that she's barely a character. She hates Jean. She likes Jean, and she helps her out, but now she hates Jean again. And it's not motivated. The art is mostly fine. It's not a style that particularly draws me in, but it's nothing to put me off the book. It's also not enough to get me past my just dislike of the way this is being written. Now, Phoenix number 7 should be a huge issue. It's Jean Grey the Phoenix versus Thanos. That sounds like a monster of a story. But the way it's written makes Thanos and the Phoenix and Jean Grey feel just like really small, unimportant characters, which you shouldn't be able to do with characters this massively important, but somehow that's what's going on. I'm giving this a 3.5 out of 10. It is just not a good book. And again, maybe I'm going to bring up my beets metaphor again. Maybe it is a good dish of beets, but I think it's both. I think it is beets, meaning it's a story I just don't like this kind of story, and I think it's probably badly prepared beets. That's a heck of a mental image for you, but I think that's what it is. Like I said earlier with Ruben, there are kind of rumors going around that something might change after issue 10. That's 3 issues down the road. Whether that's the end of this whole title, the end of Stephanie Phillips' time on the character, maybe just a change in the arc, I don't know, but I'm going to check in again for the next issue, but really I'm hoping that something changes after issue 10 to make me feel like this is a book I can get into again. All right, really ended on a positive note there, didn't I? Well, let's wrap up and talk about next week. Now, next week, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that Ruben will be able to stick around. Ruben, where is it?
Ruben
will be able to did it again. Why does that one stick?
Ruben.
I'm going to say Ruben's going to be able to stick around the entirety of next episode because we should only have 2 issues plus the Infinity comic. So we have X-Men number 10, which is all about the aftermath of the whole raid on Grey Malkin thing. Has a very, very cool looking cover featuring Cyclops, him spinning around with this, this kind of spiral shaped optic blast going in all directions. Super cool looking. And we have Psylocke number 3. We've been kind of middling on that story so far, but this issue is going to feature Grey Crow. He's a cool character, so maybe that'll give this book a little extra shine. Other things coming out next week include West Coast Avengers number 3. I'm going to read that. Maybe I'll mention anything fun that happens there. And Ultimate X-Men number 11, which I expect I'll be talking about with my buddy Jim. Okay, so now my buddy Jim is going to have to edit that out. He's going to have to edit kind of this mess together, so sorry about that, Jim. Hope it's not too hard. Hope you don't make me look like too much of a dummy, but, folks out there, while you're spending this week thinking about just what a dummy I was putting this episode together, how about you also go and read some more X-Men comics?
You are all weirdos.
Weird science
Learn
is
it.
the revolution.
Learn it.
Weird science is the revolution.
I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, right?